Welcome to the Building Interest podcast presented by Leader Bank, a series of free-flowing conversations on a wide range of banking and money-related subjects. I'm your host, Greg Farber, and on this week's episode, we are switching things up. Jay Tuli, president here at Leader Bank, sits down with another leader in the industry, Tom Shen, entrepreneur and avid board member of ZSuite Technologies, Sensibill, Shastic, Axiom Bank NA, and BankiFi. Let's jump right in.
So, Tom Shen, thank you for taking the time to join us today. I'm pumped for this conversation for a variety of reasons we can get into. First, before we start, just for the audience, Tom Shen is an important person in my life. He's served as a mentor to me and helped me with a variety of things. And we'll jump into that. But he has a really interesting career, a serial entrepreneur in the fintech space, starting with Software Dynamics, which he built and sold, Malazai, which was a digital banking company, which he built and sold. And now he serves on numerous boards where he's invaluable to a lot of the leaders that run those organizations. So, Tom, thank you for joining us today.
Jay, I'm delighted, honored to be part of this podcast with you, and especially to talk about entrepreneurship and leadership, knowing a bit about your family, about Leader Bank and the success in the marketplace you've achieved, and just being dynamic and compassionate leaders. So really looking forward to this conversation. Awesome.
Thank you, Tom. One thing that's really important is for all of us is entrepreneurship. And you are like the entrepreneur. Talk to the listeners a bit about what entrepreneurship means to you and what your journey has looked like as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Too kind. So let's start from the very, very top and think through entrepreneurship. Over the years, thinking about this particular topic, I will pick a controversial word to use that your listeners may reject or chuckle, which is insanity. You have to be insane to be an entrepreneur. You're attempting the impossible with lots and lots of folks, not counting family, telling you it can't be done, and yet you believe in the dream and you pursue it. So you have to be a bit insane. I heard this quote a long time ago. When the sane quits and go home, the insane stay. And some of the insane will actually be successful. Some are just insane. So I really enjoyed that quote about entrepreneurship. But it is to attempt something that many will say can't be done. Remember the early days when you and I sat down at that Starbucks in Calabasas and talked about the opportunity to launch ZSuite as an independent company. And we spoke that day about 90 minutes and spoke about many, many of the impossible things. But we're excited and we believe that it could be done. And sure enough, here we are several years later, having accomplished quite a bit at ZSuite. So when I think about entrepreneurship, I start with insanity. You have to be a bit insane to attempt something like this. Early in my career, Jay, I look back, I think it was that desire to win, to excel, to do the impossible. That's what drove me. If you said, golly, this can't be done, then I kind of got excited about it. Then later in my career, when I was on to my third and fourth company, it was that desire to give back, that lots have mentored me, countless of people. I stand on the shoulders of giants. And so given that, today, what I wake up thinking about is how can I give back? My life model today is build into the lives of others.
So yeah, just for the listeners, and this is awesome. I add a little context to this. So when we at Leader Bank had built out a product development team for what became the company ZSuite Technologies, we were thinking about spinning out the company, and I had no idea how to do such a thing, and was nervous as to whether we should even contemplate such a feat. And I randomly cold call Tom Shen without really even knowing him, but just knowing of him. And he had recently sold Malazai. And going to Tom's point about giving back, I was floored with how he just gave me like, was it like 30 or 40-minute conversation, Tom? And there were so many nuggets you said on that conversation about, let's see, features get commoditized, platforms get monetized. I mean, there were all these like amazing nuggets I wrote down. And I remembered after that, it was like, okay, I got to go out and meet this guy. And that's where we met in Calabasas, California, at the Starbucks. And you were so generous enough to give me like 3 hours of your time to like map out the whole thing. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was incredible. And so, just building on that, like you've had this successful career on the giving back side and the mentorship. I've seen you really take a proactive role in your mentorship that not a lot of leaders do. Talk a little bit about that. Like, why do you do it? What do you get out of it? What does that mean to you?
I enjoy being a mentor, Jay. First of all, you get an opportunity to tell stories, and I'm a storyteller, as you know. And so the opportunity to work with bright minds, with eager people wanting to learn. So I call these folks I work with, I partner with, humble learning leaders. It is about humility. Humility allows you to listen. And when you listen, you have an opportunity to learn. And so when we first met, I recognized that immediately that you were somebody that wanted to listen, took copious notes. I'm surprised you remember that quote. I live by that, by the way. When I think about fintech and I think about software companies, you need to build out a platform. And so that allows me, so that at this stage in my career, I've built 3 companies. I've had 3 successful exits as an operator. I've had 3 successful exits as a board member, non-operator. So 6 successful exits. So just been blessed with all these great opportunities, work with wonderful, wonderful people. And at this stage in my career, I don't see myself starting a company. So I have to live vicariously through people like yourself, people like Nathan, people that I partner with in the marketplace. And to paint just a quick sketch of what that looks like, a picture of success, if you will. This is looking back probably 15 years ago. I had the opportunity when I sold my first company to S1 Corporation. I worked with a young sales leader, and you could just see that drive, that eagerness to win, to do the right thing in the marketplace. Fast forward today, he's CEO of a $3 billion public company. I've never done that. And so part of the excitement for me is to build into the lives of others and then see them take it and go places where I've never been.
What I find about your story that's so incredible is like you came here as an immigrant, right? When did you come to the US? What year was that?
1972 was when I arrived at these shores.
So and how old were you?
I was 15.
15. You came here from Taiwan. and we fast forward into the future, and you're like the fintech king, right? And so tell us a little about like the beginning days, like when you started Software Dynamics. Like, how does a kid from Taiwan, new to the country, start to build banking software, which is just such a industry that's typically made up of folks who've just been in it for generations?
Yeah. So rewinding, my parents sent me to the United States by myself for higher education to East Tennessee. So I went to a boarding high school in East Tennessee. I did graduate from high school, but since past that point, I dropped out of a few very fine colleges. But I learned computer programming along the way. And so I held on to a couple of jobs. And by the time I was 25, the company that I was working for was acquired. I live in Southern California, and the acquiring company was in Dallas. And they asked everyone to move to the Dallas area. And I didn't want to go. So I was at 25 without a job, looking for my next gig. And so in between jobs, I took on a bit of contract work that had to do with building out banking teller systems.
Okay.
And so I learned how to integrate to these large IBM, Burroughs, NCR backends, sort of viewed today as sort of black magic connected to these cores. We talk about APIs and so on and so forth. There wasn't such a thing in those days. You had to hardwire them. And so I learned how to program and connect to the back end. And that's really how I got started in my first company called Software Dynamics. Looking back, I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. There was no thesis, there was no paper, there was no business plan. I fell into it, or rather, I failed into it. And so that's really how I started Software Dynamics. And we were fortunate enough, first 2-3 years, we built out some nice teller systems, new account sales systems, back office systems. And from that, we decided Software Dynamics to then go out and build our own product set rather than sort of contract work. We would build our own. And that was just happened to be a perfect timing because there was this thing called the IBM PC that came out. So rather than proprietary terminals for teller systems, we thought, geez, you could use a PC to do that. And so with the openness of Microsoft at the time and the tools that were available, we built out the first generation of a Microsoft DOS teller system. So that was in 1987-ish. I started a company in 82. In 87, we launched our first product. We were fortunate enough, Jay, that over a period of 15 years, we were able to win 1,200 banks and credit unions worldwide.
That's incredible. Incredible.
Yeah, from some of the smaller credit unions up to some of the money center banks, international banks such as ABN AMRO, Westpac in Australia and New Zealand, Compass Bank that later became BBVA in the United States. And this for a college dropout, I learned how to lead on the fly. I no formal education in that area. And I really subscribe to one thing, and that is, if I received this news, how would it feel? How would it feel? So whenever I say something to somebody else, I wanted to make sure I tried on myself. If it felt okay, I could do it. If it didn't feel good, maybe I ought to rethink it. So that was really the simple rule I lived by in the early days of Software Dynamics.
And there's so many different ways like I feel we could improve this conversation, but I wanted to ask you this one question because it appears to me like, so with Software Dynamics, it appears you you sort of saw this wave of individual PCs coming, and you saw how a bank technology solution could kind of like ride this wave for change. And there seems to be some similarities to that with Malazai, where if you could talk a little bit about that, where you see this sea change to mobile before really everybody else saw it, and you realize that online banking could sort of migrate to this sort of mobile digital application, and that was kind of the genesis of Malazai. So could you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. Again, to go back to my original theme of being accidental entrepreneur, I have to confess, many of these thoughts I share with you today is sort of hindsight and looking back. I wish I could honestly tell you at that moment, I thought, my gosh, this is it, right? I'm just not that smart. But when I look back, I look at my days at Software Dynamics leading that organization, and then later Malazai leading that company. It really is the focus of customer interaction. In the 1980s, folks went to a branch. That's where they conducted transactions. Donuts and toasters aside, you went into the branch to deposit, to open a new account. Where fast forward 2010, when I started Malazai, a mobile-focused digital banking company, that's where the customers were in 2010 and are today, is they're on their mobile devices. We are constantly on our mobile devices. And so that was the nearest a financial institution would get to their customers. So in 2010, I realized that there was this tsunami that's hitting the marketplace, which is mobile devices. People are not going to their desktop most of the time to do banking. They're going to do it on their mobile devices. So mobile became the center of interaction, whereas desktop internet banking, while popular today and continued to be used, was going to be secondary to the mobile devices. Many of the companies at the time thought, gosh, mobile is just another iteration of the desktop. Mobile will be hinged to desktop. But I saw it the other way around, where mobile became more important. And so that's really how I started Malazai.
So let's pivot now to leadership. You've worked with lots of different people in your organizations. You've been on a lot of boards where you've observed different leaders. And then you've also worked with a lot of leadership as clients, like different bank leaders and things like that. What can you share about leadership from your point of view? I mean, you're definitely very astute to this topic. So I just love to hear, like, as you identify leaders, what are the common traits that you see?
Okay. Let me rewind and start and talk about entrepreneurs and talk about leaders. I find that entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, possess two qualities. The first one is a passion for the mission. Whatever the mission is, they have a passion for it. The second, compassion for people. People being teammates, being customers. So passion for mission, compassion for people. When you have those two attributes, I find there's an opportunity to be successful as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, you serve three constituents: customers, teammates, shareholders. And the words I use for those three constituents are delighted customers, and we can go to delighted customers off another tangent because I love talking about delighting customers. Delighted customers. Number two, thriving teammates. Teammates need to thrive in the environment, in the culture of which you, the entrepreneur, you, the leader, have created. And number three, the end result of one and two, is satisfy shareholders.
Hmm.
Often we get confused in the marketplace and we try to satisfy shareholders first. I believe when you flip that on its head, you get bad results. So let's jump to leadership. I mentioned earlier about humble learning leaders. I love working with humble learning leaders. I talked about humility. In every meeting I go to, on every call I get on, I want to learn one thing. I'm curious. I want to learn one thing. Even if it doesn't directly affect what we're doing right now, that one learning will benefit sometime down the road. So I'm greedy. I want to learn. Humility is really at the heart of what I believe good leadership. I subscribe to a school of leadership called servant leadership. I believe leaders are to be servants first. Our job is to serve and delight our customers. But if you build an organization, the leader is actually the furthest away from the customer. So therefore, to continue to delight customers, you need to build a team around you that respect you. You need to earn the right to be respected and the right to lead. And so in order to build that team to delight the customers, you have to have thriving teammates. So servant leadership. I love this quote by Professor Antonio Argandona. I'm sure I'm butchering his name. He writes about humility. He said, in our society today, we never use that word, much less in business. And he writes, humility is key because it strengthens self-honesty, builds relationships, and engenders trust in teams. That is so well said. So humility is really, to me, the key to sustained good leadership.
Tom, you said something really interesting. You as a leader have to earn the right to be respected. I love that. How does a leader earn that right to be respected?
Well, I think the leader needs to, first of all, think clearly about the mission and the vision. The clarity of mission and vision is important. So in order to lead, there has to be something, an idea to lead with. If that idea is not clear, it's really hard for people to follow, right? It's as if somebody gave you a roadmap that wasn't very clear where to get to. It's hard to drive a path of which you don't know where the end is. So it's really important for a leader to be crystal clear in what the mission is, what the vision is. And then the ability to articulate that vision and mission. I often say, you're not a great leader if you don't have great followership. I remember early in my career, I had a young fellow working for me who really wanted to be a big leader. So he often came to me and asked me if he could be next in line for promotion. And so I try to gently prod him and try to help him think through leadership, starting from, why do you want to become a leader? And he often had the wrong reason. And at one point, he was so exasperated when he was speaking to me. He said, I'm a great leader. It's just, I don't have any followers. And it was so hard not to just break out laughing, right? And that's where I got that saying from. Great leadership must have great followership. If there isn't great followership, you got to look in the mirror. You're probably not a very good leader. right? So you need to be very clear in your vision, in your mission, and then you must be able to articulate that. In some way, codify that. And then from that, you need to carefully pick men and women that can accept that can catch that vision. And then you form the team. Is that helpful?
Totally. That's awesome. Thank you, Tom. And then another thing you said, which I wrote down, was the delighted customers. At Leader Bank, one of our main values and core tenets is client obsessed service. We try to really get the whole culture around this sort of focus on the client, do everything we can to delight them. Talk to me a little bit about that from your experience.
Yeah. I love that, right? We exist as a business to serve our customers. If we didn't have customers, we wouldn't exist. We shouldn't exist. So it's all about the customer. I talk about being maniacal about delighting customers. And I'll use two examples in my journey that I've learned about customer service. Your listeners may not remember this far back, but many years ago, decades ago, there was a bank called MBNA. They were in the credit card business mostly, and they were extremely successful. And MBNA contracted with Software Dynamics to build a back office system, a call system. I work with one of their leaders, Jerry Pollard. And when the system was ready to go online, he asked if he could come to California and address the QA team. So one fine day, he flew in from the East Coast to Southern California, and we piled in the entire development team, QA team into a room. He was very generous. He gave out gift cards and free vacations to get everybody's attention. But something he said that day resonated with me, and I held on to that. And I use that with every company, every team I work with. He said, we signed a contract with you that says 99.99 uptime. Those were days of 4 nines. I think we're 5, 6, 7, 8 nines now, but 99.99 uptime. But I want you to know that I'm expecting 100%. Now, before all of you in the room start laughing at me because I'm not a technologist and 100% is impossible, let me tell you this. Say you achieve 99.99. When you fail that 0.01% of the time, that one customer on the other end of the call center, you have failed that one customer 100%. Don't ever forget that. That so resonated with me because that one customer, and I've been that customer, you've been that one customer, and we failed them totally. And that's just not acceptable, right? So that sense of 100% is so important to embody into the culture of the company. So I learned that, and I preach that, and I have teams that are so sick and tired of me telling that story. But as I said earlier, I'm a storyteller, and I love that story. Many years later, I invested in a small company in Atlanta, and I had the good fortune of serving on a board with a gentleman that was part of the Chick-fil-A organization, David Salyers. And David Salyers shared something about a delighted customer. He said, when you have a delighted customer, there's 3 characteristics of that delighted customer. Number 1, they use your products. Makes sense. Number 2, you grab your friends in your family by the lapel and you drag them in to use the product. Number 3, and this was the one that I had not thought of before. When you have a delighted customer, they will pay full price. If you gave a Chick-fil-A fan a 50% discount to another chicken sandwich store, they're going to drive an extra half a mile, wait in line for an extra 15 minutes, and pay full price. It is economic power that when you're a fintech or you're a bank, when you have delighted customers, your rates may not be as good. You may have a little premium that you charge, but your customers are happy to pay for it because they're delighted.
I love that, Tom. It's interesting that some organizations, whether they be fintech or banks, really embody this concept of client obsession or delighting the customers, and others don't. And I'm curious, from your point of view, what culturally creates that in an organization, and for those that don't have it, what's lacking in those organizations? Like, why is there such a difference on how organizations think about client service?
Golly, I don't want to oversimplify this, Jay. And many of your listeners may not agree with me. I believe it starts from the very top of the house. It starts from the leader. And it's not what the leader says. Every company has got some kind of ethics thing going on. It's not about that. It's about how the leader behaves, how a leader models that behavior. I used to say, when I answer my customer's phone call, I don't check the size of the contract first. I don't check the renewal of the contract first. I believe the leader sets the tone, the leader models the behavior. I think modeling the behavior is most important. I have to be honest. I've been in organizations where leaders would say all the right things, but come budget time, come closed door, that's often not a consideration. I think you need to have a little longer view to be focused on customer delight, to be maniacal about customer delight. So it's a simple answer.
Yeah.
Starts from the top of the house where it is a belief in the heart. I used to say this, when my customer hurts, I physically hurt for them because they gave me money. And instead of creating value for them, I've destroyed value for them. That can't be the case.
So, Tom, now let's, on our last topic, let's pivot to banking. We are at Leader Bank always thinking about how do we continue to evolve? How do we continue to be a relevant banking brand? You've worked with thousands of banks from your various companies, and you've seen both very progressive banks that have done phenomenally well, and you've seen banks that have floundered or gotten acquired or sold or whatever. Tell us a little bit about, what can we learn from that? What have you learned from a banking organization that really separates the leaders from the pack?
Today, when I look into the marketplace, I see successful financial institutions that are growing. And we're circling all the way back to customer service. It is about maniacal about customer service. It's about being focused, defining your mission, your vision. Who are your customers? And once you define that set of customers, be maniacal about servicing those customers. One of the lessons I've learned in building companies is when you make a mistake and you onboard a wrong customer, you must have the courage to fire that customer. Because that wrong customer that you cannot service properly creates a drag on the organization. Very often, if you think about it, most of our meetings, we spend 80% of the time talking about a problem, not talking about how do we build a better business or expand the business. We're problem solving. Very often it's because we onboarded the wrong customer. So it takes courage. And I've had to learn that in my career. You don't want to do that. But if it's the wrong customer, you need to have that conversation and fire that customer. Find them somewhere else to go to, because you're not going to service them correctly. They're not going to be delighted. So customer service, finding the right customer. You can't serve everybody and make everybody happy. Leader Bank is very targeted and very focused. I've watched your organization and what you've built, very specific. And you don't want to go outside of those swimming lanes unless you deliberately plan and move forward to do that. Doesn't mean you can't expand. I serve on the board of a small community bank in Florida, Axiom Bank. And we're focused on a particular segment and very well defined. And we make sure we do not go into the wrong swimming lane. So customer service. The second is, in today's world, as a financial institution, you must be nimble. You must be nimble. And that really starts, again, from the organization. The ability to say, hey, we spot a trend and that we must react to that. Whether it's nimbleness in product offering or nimbleness in technology, we need to meet the customer where they are at. We need to serve them where they're at, right? Which sort of leads to the whole discussion of hyper-personalization. I think we are approaching, maybe we're entering an age of hyper-personalization. So you target a particular customer set that you can serve, but you need to understand their particular needs. You need to understand their life stage. You need to understand their behavior, their preferences, and based off understanding of that customer, offer intelligent propositions and smart servicing. Service them where they're at. If they have a particular channel they like to use that channel. That's how they like to communicate. It may not even just be that personal channel, but it may be that channel at that time of day. I may be on my mobile cell phone during working hours, but late in the evening, I may be on my iPad possibly, or on the desktop. It is that type of hyper-personalization that makes the customer feel special. And we all like to feel special.
Definitely true. Tom, so as we wrap up, and you've just been such a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really loving this conversation, what's keeping you inspired these days? What do you look forward to now?
Jay, as we've talked and you know me a little bit, I think blessed is the word I would use for my life. Every time there's the last piece of the apple pie, I get it. There's a $20 bill floating around on the sidewalk, I pick it up. So I've just lived a blessed life. And, I've never had to work because whatever I did was fun, right? You remember a couple years ago, you and I had a one-on-one conversation about fun, right?
Yep.
And it's about fun. And I tell people around me that when I have unfun, that's when I'm going to stop. So I want to continue to have fun. It's fun to build. And golly, it's fun to win, right? It's fun to win. it's okay to lose. You learn from losing. When you and I talk, most stories you hear from me are about losing, because that's when you learn the most, right? So continue to build, okay? Learn from your mistake, right? And live vicariously through young leaders like yourself who've got that energy and dynamism, right? And to me, that's fun, and I'll continue to do that as long as it's fun.
Well, I can just say, you've definitely inspired me in many ways, and I know you inspire a lot of the people you work with, and the passion is infectious. So, it's just been great having you as a friend and a mentor, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Tom. Thanks for the time today. It was awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
I love the conversations, and I hope your listeners pick up one thing from this conversation, and that helps them along life's road. And so thank you so much, Jay, for the time.
Thank you, Tom.
Tom Shen is not affiliated with or employed by Leader Bank NA, and all opinions expressed by Tom Shen are his own and not the opinions of Leader Bank. In addition to past episodes, you can also find our corresponding blog entries on our website, leaderbank.com. This podcast is a production of Leader Bank NA, Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC, NMLS number 449250.